Today on TimesCast, Syria continues suppressing anti-government protests and a Palestinian refugee camp is caught in the crossfire. With weak economic data hitting Europe's two largest economies, French President Nicolas Sarkozy and German Chancellor Angela Merkel announced proposals aimed at stabilizing the Eurozone. And on his bus tour through the Midwest, President Obama visits must-win states for re-election next year.
How are you, sir?
The Syrian government's assault on the port city of Latakia entered its fourth day today. The attack began on Saturday when tanks, soldiers, security forces, and paramilitaries known as Shabiha assaulted the city. Latakia is a port on the Mediterranean. It has a mix of a Sunni Muslim majority and an Alawite minority from which the government is disproportionately represented. The assault has mirrored other attacks on Hama and Deir ez-Zor, but the raids on Latakia were a little bit different. Ships were anchored offshore, and gunfire was reported by witnesses as coming from them, though the Syrian government denies that gunships were deployed. The raids have targeted most ferociously a Palestinian refugee camp on the southern outskirts of the city. Generations have now resided in those camps, and their treatment has long been better than their compatriots in, say, Lebanon. But the uprising has roiled the society in general. It's been a site of persistent protest during the 5-month uprising against the rule of President Bashar al-Assad. The decision by the government to attack a Palestinian refugee camp opens up another front in a country already roiled with dissent and defiance. Already Palestinian officials in the West Bank have loudly criticized the raid.
هذه جريمة ضد الإنسانية.
The United Nations has complained of the treatment of those residents there, and there have been growing condemnations over both the persistence and the violence of the raid itself. Syria's uprising is now entering its 6th month. Condemnations have grown ever more adamant. The United States, Europe, even Turkey, a long-standing ally of Syria, have said that the violence must stop. Some activists believe that the attacks in Latakia, in particular on the camp on the southern outskirts, may change that dynamic in the days and weeks to come.
French President Nicolas Sarkozy and German Chancellor Angela Merkel called for Eurozone countries to integrate their economic policies.
This is Stephen Erlanger of the New York Times in Paris, where the French and German leaders, President Nicolas Sarkozy and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, met today in a highly anticipated meeting whose results are bound to disappoint the markets. France and Germany are just coming off bad growth numbers, also true of China and the United States, and the lookout is now for more economic stagnation, which will make debt problems worse. The two leaders, however, intended to try to give confidence to the markets, and to do that, they announced that they would work together to propose more economic integration among the members of the Eurozone, more regular meetings, and would work very, very hard to put into place constitutional amendments that would regulate debt and try to bring down the percentage of debt so markets would have a longer-term confidence in the future of the Eurozone. But Mrs. Merkel, as she often does, said there was no magic wand, there was no quick fix, and both leaders were very much opposed to the idea of Eurobonds, as some market analysts wanted, which would put the entire credibility of the Eurozone behind all its debt. They said it was too soon for that there was not enough economic integration and not enough discipline, and they suggested it would do more harm to their own countries than it would benefit the weaker countries in the Eurozone.
President Obama is making his re-election pitch directly to independent and moderate voters. It's a marked contrast to his Republican rivals, especially Governor Rick Perry of Texas.
For President Obama, this 3-day bus trip through the Midwest is a chance to restore some momentum to a presidency that's been through a difficult summer.
How are you, sir? Good to see you.
These are states the president carried in the 2008 election, but with the weaker economy and rising unemployment, his disapproval rating is now above 50% in Minnesota and Iowa. So he has work to do with these battleground states. And in the speeches he's given over the past 2 days, you can begin to see the outlines of an argument he's making, not just to the Democratic faithful, but to independent voters. He's saying to independents, look, I understand the political system in Washington is broken, and I need you to help me.
I don't care whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, if you're not registered with any party. I want to enlist your help. I need your help sending a message to Congress that it's time to put the politics aside and get something done.
This is in marked contrast to the Republican hopefuls, many of whom have also been stumping around Iowa this week, and many of whom have used very strong, quite partisan rhetoric aimed at their Republican political base. The most prominent of these is Governor Rick Perry, the latest entrant into the Republican race, who said in Iowa this week that the Federal Reserve's policy of printing money to stimulate the economy verged on treasonous.
I don't know what y'all would do to them in Iowa, but we would treat them pretty ugly down in Texas.
The lines between President Obama and the Republican field are being drawn ever clearer here in Iowa.